everybody, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. Okay, so today I'm doing my July monthly wrap part 1, talking all the books I read in the first half of July, and then in my next video I'll do part 2 where I talk the second half of my books. Usually I do stats in both part 1 and part 2. I won't do stats in this video, I'll save all the stats for part number 2, but let's jump right on in. Very, very interesting month, the month of July for me, and you'll find out more about that when I go through part 2 with you. But let's talk about the first half of the month of July, and we're going to start, as I do when the situation arises, and it did in the month of July, with a book I DNF'd. Now, DNF, for those of you who don't know, stands for did not finish. You pick up a book and you get to a certain point, it's for whatever reason not working for you, so you decide you're not going to continue on with the book. So you DNF it, you did not finish. I DNF'd one book in the month of July, and that was this book, Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane, I think is how you pronounce his name. I thought I would know by now, but I DNF'd the book. Look, I think this is an adult thriller. The reason why I DNF'd this book was because I just was not vibing with the book at all. I think I got maybe 2 chapters in, and after the first chapter, I wasn't vibing with it, but I thought, look, I should give it another chapter, see how I go. And then got through the second chapter, and that's when I remembered that this is actually a movie. So I believe the book came first and the movie second. So I decided to look up the synopsis of the film to see if it would interest me. It didn't. I then had a look at the trailer for the film. It still didn't interest me, so I decided to DNF. There's really not a lot for me to say about this at all, so we're just going to move on. If you love this book, fantastic. And if you want to read the book in the future, don't let my thoughts spoil you for picking it up. Please go ahead and pick it up. I won't say anything else other than it just wasn't working for me personally. It was a personal preference, so I DNF'd it. So now let's talk about the books I did read in the first half of July 2023. And the first book that I read for the first half of July 2023 was this book, Call It What You Want by Bridget Kemmerer. This is a YA contemporary, and I gave this book 4 stars. I have read 2 other of Bridget Kemmerer's works, which are Letters to the Lost and Call It What You Want, both also contemporaries. I loved them. Bridget Kemmerer has also released a fantasy series. I read the first book in that fantasy series, and while it was okay, I did not want to continue on with the series. So what I discovered about myself is that I love Bridget Kemmerer as a writer of contemporary works. So I've actually had this book on my shelf for quite a while and decided it was finally time to give it a read. So the premise of this book is that Rob's dad was caught embezzling funds from half the town, and everyone at the school blames him. Megan, as a typical overachiever, is a typical overachiever who cheated on her exams. When Rob and Megan are paired together for a calculus project, they're both reluctant to let anyone through the walls they've built. But when Megan learns of Rob's plan to fix the danger caused by his father, it could ruin more than their fragile new friendship. So to my thoughts on the book, and well, I actually nearly DNF'd this one as well. Why? Megan. Oh my gosh, she annoyed me so much at the beginning. This book is dual perspective, so we follow both Rob and Megan in alternating chapters. Megan's first 7 chapters had at least one moment where she did something or thought something that made no sense to me whatsoever. She's built up to be this incredibly intelligent girl, and one example of annoyance was when she decided Rob must be to blame for what his father did. And this is just an example. I know I'm saying it out of context. It doesn't matter what his father did, but she has this thought in her mind, Rob must be to blame for what his father did. But why does she think this? because everyone else in school thinks so. So clearly he must be to blame. And it doesn't make sense. Megan is built up to be an intellectual person. So it didn't make sense to me with this character being so incredibly smart that she would just go with mob mentality. The answer is this because this is what the mob says, and I'm not going to think outside of that or try and come up with a conclusion on my own. So that's just one example. There was at least one moment in every single one of her perspectives, as I said, where she did something or thought something that really, really annoyed me. So I understand there's such a thing as mob mentality at a high school, but for a character as intelligent as Megan, the fact that she just went along with that mob mentality really annoyed me, as well as other things as I alluded to. The saving grace of this book is Rob. Rob, on the other hand, I loved as a character. In the past, he was a popular boy at school, but this whole thing with his dad made him become a social pariah overnight. Because of this, we see Rob at his most humble, and that made him incredibly endearing. The book definitely improves in the second half, which is why it got the 4 stars it did. So there you go, I gave the book 4 stars. But, yeah, really wanted to DNF because of Megan, but kept going because of Rob. Glad I kept going because the second half got better. All in all, 4 stars. I do recommend Bridget Kemmerer as a contemporary author, but if you've read none of her works before, I would highly recommend starting off with Letters to the Lost and then going from there. Because this one, as I say, first 7 or so chapters of Megan's perspective wasn't working for me, where I loved Letters to the Lost from start to end. But anyway, 4 stars for this one. So the next book that I read in the first half of July 2023 was this book, Crossed by Ali Condi. This is book number 2 in the Matched series. It is a YA dystopian series, and I gave this book a total of 4 stars as well. So, the premise of this book is, chasing down an uncertain future, Kesha makes her way, to the outer provinces in pursuit of Sky, taken by the society to his certain death, only to find that he has escaped into the majestic but treacherous canyons. On this wild frontier are glimmers of a different life, and the enthralling premise of rebellion. But even as Kesha sacrifices everything to reunite with Kai, ingenious surprises from Xander may change the game. On the edge of society, nothing is as expected, and crosses and double crosses make Kesha's path more twisted than ever. So to my thoughts, honestly the first half was very dull for me. I mean, I get what Condi was doing. Kesha wants to see Kai, so she travels to him, and Kai wants to be doing something that's a spoiler that I can't say. But the problem with this is that we deal with the traveling/questing trope for the first half of the book, which is my own personal least favourite trope. In saying that, it picked up in the second half, reminding me why I fell in love with book 1. I'm intrigued to see how Condi concludes the series in book 3, which I'm reading next month, or this month, depending on when you're watching this, in August. It really could go one of 2 ways, amazing or a downward spiral. All in all, for me, this series will hinge on the final book, so we'll see how things go. But yeah, for this particular book, Crossed, I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I picked up was this book, Bridge Over Troubled Dreams by Delta Goodrem. This is an adult non-fiction music biography. Okay, there's a lot to unpack with those genres and whatever else, and that is because this book looks like it might be a biography. It is. But it's not a biography about author Delta Goodrem. It is a biography about her latest album, or at the time latest album. I don't know, she might have released one since then. I've come to find out that, look, very quick backstory. When I was at a very impressionable age, I was introduced to singer-songwriter Delta Goodrem. She had released her first album called Innocent Eyes, and I fell in love with her very quickly. Being that she is a singer-songwriter, she writes all of her songs herself, and they all have something to do with things to do with her own life, experiences that she's had. And I think she's released like 7 albums by now. But the first one really highly spoke to me, and I'll just say a very quick sidebar for you to understand where my true love for this artist comes from. So people have said off and on throughout life that it's about feeling music, how music can make you feel a certain way and it can affect you in a certain way. And I had not ever experienced that until at one point in my life where things were very, very dark for me. I don't want to spend too long on this. This is a booktube channel and we don't really need to talk too much about the darker times of my life, but I was going through a lot of struggles in my life. On this channel I'm very transparent. I was going through a lot of struggles in my life, and quite frankly, back then, I don't think I even knew if I would be around today doing what I'm doing and loving what I'm doing, being here on BookTube. So things were really, really tough for me. I was in high school and it was just, the unspoken words being, I did not want to be here anymore. I did not want to be on this earth anymore. And Delta released her second album called Mistaken Identity. The feature track on that album, Mistaken Identity, called Mistaken Identity, the track itself as well as the album, both called the same name, really turned my life around and got me from this dark place of really wanting to end it all to literally turning things around, just doing a full 180 or 360 or whatever you want to call it. And my life changed from that moment onwards. And I was already in love with Delta, but the power of her music just really spoke to me. So to find out that she had released a book really intrigued me. So I picked it up and I read it, and I thought it was great. So I'll very quickly tell you what I have as the premise. In her first ever book, Australian singer-songwriter Delta Goodrem shares the intimate stories behind each of the tracks in her 6th studio album, Bridge Over Troubled Dreams, taking readers on a deep dive into her inspiration for each song and revealing the truth behind the lyrics. So to my thoughts, I had just come off DNFing a book, as we know. It was this book, Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. And I wanted a nice memoir and then came across this. As I said, I've always loved Delta since Innocent Eyes, but somehow this album, Bridge Over Troubled Dreams, completely slipped my notice. This book, though, was everything you could want from Delta regarding an album and the thought process behind it. I think she should go back to every album she's done and release more books. My only con, it was short, and I really did wish for more. But otherwise, a great book from a great artist, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. I highly recommend the book. I think it's a great idea, and if any other artists that you know of have done something like this, where they write a book, and in the book, track by track of a particular album, they discuss the ins, outs, and goings on, and how each track went from nothing to the track on the album, I would love to read it because I just think it was a fantastic idea. I recommend the book, and I recommend listening to Delta Goodrem as an artist. Yeah, her music is very, very inspirational. 4.5 stars from me. I spent a lot of time on that, so let's move right along. The next book that I read in the first half of July 2023 was this book, Pretties by Scott Westerfeld. This is book number 2 in the Ugly series. It is a YA dystopian, and I gave this book 3 stars. So the premise of this book is that we continue to follow Tally, who now faces the prospect of being pretty, but is beauty really only skin deep. So yeah, very quick backstory to this series as a whole. We're in a world where it's set in the future where the leaders of this world have determined that throughout history, people have been favored, prioritized, put on a pedestal, being given better opportunities, owing purely to their looks and nothing else. And so because of that, to even out the field for everyone, when everyone turns 16, they go through life-altering, beautifying surgery to look beautiful. And then everyone from the age of 16 onwards looks beautiful on the same level. And so therefore, because of that, they are not judged by their looks, they're judged by whatever else it is that they have outside of their natural physical beauty, I suppose. Well, not natural because of surgery, but you know what I mean. They're judged on anything and everything else that they can bring to the table aside from their looks. So I appreciate the dystopian from that point of view, but there is so much more to this world than meets the eye, as you can imagine, with it being a dystopian. So to my thoughts on this one, and look, we ended book 1 knowing that Tully was going to be made a pretty, and I was really excited to see this happen. Then bam, page 1, paragraph 1 advises me, oh no, that's already happened. This is why I hate time jumps. Book 1 led us to the point where she would be made pretty, and I was so intrigued to see this play out, but oh no, that's not important enough to witness. I even checked if there was a 1.5 novella that shows the process, but no, there isn't. So, moving on from that, which took a while for me to do admittedly, we then spent time in Prettyville. I loved this. I had been waiting all of book 1 to finally get there, and then we were there, and this was great. The world building was fantastic. But then we had to go on this traveling/questing trope, and boy, do I hate the traveling/questing tropes. Besides, didn't we already do this in book 1? Unless you are a fan of the Lord of the Rings series, I hope you understand that I don't like the traveling/questing trope anyway, which I've already spoken about in this particular video with another book. But when you do that with book 1, and then everything is fine and we're not going on any more traveling/questing tropes, but then in book 2, we go on a completely other traveling/questing trope. It just really annoys me. I really hope that book 3 specials doesn't have us go on a traveling/questing trope, because it's really gonna annoy me. One thing that I love about dystopians is we don't need to go on a traveling/questing trope. We can stay right in the world where everything is being controlled and explore that world. And to me, the main selling point of a dystopian is the world building of what makes this world, rather than let's go on a traveling/questing trope and see how far we can travel to see if there's something else that exists. It's just my personal preference. Let me know if you agree in the comments below, and if you don't, that's totally fine too. You may love that in 2 out of 2 books so far in this series, there's a different traveling/questing trope. Let's keep going. Okay, so now let's talk about the word bubbly. My word, can we stop using that word? Every page in this book, it is bubbly this and bubbly that, and I was feeling bubbly, or this was making me feel bubbly. I mean, seriously, you get to the point, because there's a difference between a word being used a certain amount of times, and then there's that fine line, and if you cross it, the word goes from being used a number of times to being overused, to the point that you as the reader are looking for that word. You are distracted from everything else because you haven't seen the word bubbly yet. Oh, wait, there it is, you know? So that really, really did annoy me. The ending was the saving grace for the middle, though. I am intrigued to see what will happen to Tully in the next one, but I really, really hope we're done with the traveling/questing trope. All in all, I gave the book the average rating of 3 stars. And the final book that I read for the first half of July 2023 was this book, The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is an adult, I'm calling it a thriller because it's called an adult mystery thriller, but I'm calling it a thriller because it's more a thriller than a mystery. And I gave this book a total of 4.5 stars. So a couple of months ago, read another book by Alex Michaelides, The Silent Patient. I loved that book. I gave it 5 stars. So I was really intrigued to see what I thought of this one. So I'm going to tell you the premise now. I'm going to put a spoiler tag up on the screen for this because some people, when it comes to thrillers, some readers don't want to know anything at all about the premise of a thriller. So we'll put a spoiler tag up on the screen. When the spoiler tag goes, feel free to come back to us if you don't want to be spoiled for this book. So, the premise is, Edward Forcosa is a murderer. Of this, Mariana is certain, but Forcosa is untouchable. A handsome and charismatic Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University, Forcosa is adored by staff and students alike, particularly by the members of a secret society of female students known as the Maidens. Mariana Andros is a brilliant but troubled group therapist who becomes fixated on the Maidens when one member, a friend of Mariana's niece Zoe, is found murdered in Cambridge. Mariana, who was once herself a student at the university, quickly suspects that behind the idyllic beauty of the spires and turrets and beneath the ancient traditions lies something sinister, and she becomes convinced that despite his alibi, Edward Ficosa is guilty of the murder. But why would the professor target one of his students, and why does he keep returning to the rites of Persephone, the maiden, and her journey to the underworld? Okay, spoiler tag off the screen. So to my thoughts, honestly, it was a boring start. It surprised me as I was intrigued by the silent patient all the way through. I get that ground laying needs to occur, but unlike The Silent Patient, Michaelides' other book where the setup itself intrigued me, the setup of this book seemed to drag. But once things got going, the book became littered with quintessential Alex Michaelides brilliance. Mariana is the perfect protagonist, and the mystery behind who the murderer is becomes incredibly intriguing the more we move forward in the story. There's a reveal of sorts that happens towards the end that had me thinking a certain thing that was shocking in and of itself, but then when the actual who, what, where, when, and why reveal came to light, well, I was blown away by it as I was with the reveal from The Silent Patient. Aside from the uninteresting setup, which I docked 0.5 stars for, this book was fantastic, and that's 2 amazing thrillers in a row for me from Alex Michaelides. I can't wait to read his next book, which sadly does not come out until 2024, and I gave this book a total of 4.5 stars. And that is it. Those are the first 5 books that I read for the month of July 2023. I ended up reading a total of 10 books in the month of July. So I will leave it there for part 1. The next video you'll see will be part 2, where I'll give you all of my stats and the other 5 books that I read for the month of July 2023. But until that time, I'm going to let you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone.